Good afternoon and welcome. We are so glad you're here today for today's TBS Mastery Series webinar. This is the first of a four-part series, and if you haven't already, be sure to register for the remaining sessions that are happening in May, August, and October by scanning the QR code in the top right. Now listen, if you're preparing for the CPA exam, you know task-based simulations literally can make or break your score. They are one of the most challenging parts of the exam. They would be hard if they were open book, and that's exactly why we created this series. So today, you'll learn proven strategies tackling different task-based simulation formats. We're going to walk through real simulations step by step and share time management techniques so you can apply right away. You'll have also a live Q&A at the end, so feel free to submit your questions as we go. And Jeannie will hit the next slide. My name is Quinn Perkson. I'm the Director of Partnerships for UWorld, and leading us through today's session is Dr. Jeanne Yamamura. Jeannie is a UWorld instructor and one of our task-based simulation experts. You may have already seen her in the task-based simulation or the TBS Mastery videos inside the UWorld course, and she spent decades helping CPA candidates pass the exam. She brings an incredible wealth of knowledge and information and experience from her doctorate to her years teaching, auditing, and information systems. She truly knows this material inside and out, and she's here to help turn you into TBS Masters and help, TBS Masters from your biggest challenge into your most competitive edge. Next slide. All right, and before we get going, just a couple housekeeping notes. Of course, as you would expect, this webinar is being recorded and a link will be provided to you within 2 days via email. It will also be available on the UWorld Accounting YouTube channel. And if you have questions along the way, we welcome them. So please submit them in the questions box. Our team will be doing our best to keep up with responding, and any questions that aren't addressed here and today we'll follow up with. So with that, thank you for coming and joining us. And please join me in welcoming Dr. Jeanne Yamamura.
All right. Congratulations. You're on the final step. You're preparing to take the CPA exam. Studying for and passing the CPA exam is a big undertaking, but it also tells the world that you possess the skills and knowledge required of a CPA. The exam consists of 5 testlets over a 4-hour window. The first 2 testlets contain a set number of multiple choice questions with the number varying by section, usually somewhere between 25 and 41. The remaining 3 testlets contain 6 to 8 task-based simulations or TBSs. Most sections have 7 TBSs. Now the exam isn't just a test of what you know, it's a test of stamina, strategy, and professional judgment. The exam tests at 4 different levels: remembering and understanding, application, analysis, and evaluation. Remembering and understanding is exactly what it sounds like. Remember a concept or recognize it. Application requires using the information. Analysis goes a step further to require remembering, understanding, applying, and synthesizing. Evaluation requires problem assessment and judgment. In the world of the CPA exam, TBSs are the bridge between knowing the material and actually being able to use it in a real-world setting. While multiple choice questions tend to test your memory and quick recall, TBSs go further and test your judgment and analytical skills. What is a TBS? It is a case-style problem that tests how well you can apply accounting, auditing, or tax concepts in realistic professional scenarios, similar to what a CPA actually does on the job. So instead of choosing between A, B, C, and D, you might be filling out a tax form, adjusting a trial balance, or researching a specific tax code. Why they matter? In all of the sections except ISC, TBSs are worth 50% of your total score. But candidates often worry because TBSs can be significantly more difficult than multiple choice questions. Why? TBSs test different mental muscles. Where multiple choice are mainly testing remembering and understanding, TBSs are testing application, analysis, and evaluation skills. TBSs can include a lot of extra information, such as financial statements, analyses, memos, and work papers. TBSs take more time. Yes, there are only 6 to 8 of them, but each one can take 15 minutes, and a complicated TBS can take 25 to 30 minutes. We can help you. Our objectives for today are to review different types of TBSs, provide strategies for solving them, offer time management and scoring tips, with the goal of making you a TBS master. So let's start with different types of TBSs. There are 4 basic types of TBSs: option list, numeric entry, journal entry, and document review simulation, or DRS. An option list TBS requires that you select the best answer from a list of choices. A numeric entry TBS asks you to calculate and enter a number. A journal entry TBS requires you to prepare a journal entry, meaning that you select the accounts and determine the amounts to debit and credit. A document review simulation requires you to edit a document of some type. For example, a memo, a financial statement, or a tax return, based on additional information that has been provided. One more thing to mention, each of these types can be easy or hard, depending on whether or not they've included a detailed scenario or added exhibits. They can also be combined, where you have to do 2 or more tasks, such as calculate numbers and select from a list of options. So here's an example of an easy option list TBS from Reg. All you have to do is select the answer from the list of choices you are given. So step 1 with any TBS is to scan the TBS to see what's there and what you're required to do. In this TBS, you have 9 expenses that you are asked to analyze for itemized deduction purposes. The instructions are pretty straightforward. Green is a U.S. taxpayer. Green has an adjusted gross income of $40,000 and is able to itemize deductions. We are asked to select the proper tax treatment of Green's various expenditures from the list provided. Now notice the wording here. For the items below, select the appropriate tax treatment from the option list. An option may be selected once, more than once, or not at all. I'm only mentioning this here because these are standard instructions in the CPA exam. You will usually have the full list of choices available to you for each item that you need to analyze. What are our choices? For this one, we have not deductible on Form 1040 and no credit is allowable, deductible on Schedule A itemized deductions and not subject to AGI limitations, deductible on Schedule A itemized deductions subject to a limitation of 60% of adjusted gross income, deductible on Schedule A itemized deductions as miscellaneous deductions, deductible on Schedule E supplemental income and loss, and a credit is allowable. Now, if you took a look at the 5th expense, you would see the same list of options available. So that tells you that for this TBS, you've got the same choices for each of the expenses. So let's try the first item. Green paid $2,000 interest on the $25,000 home equity mortgage for his vacation home, which he used exclusively for personal use. The mortgage is secured by Green's vacation home, and the loan proceeds were used to purchase an automobile. Now, interest on a home mortgage is generally deductible. even interest on second homes like vacation homes. But interest on home equity debt is only deductible if it is used to buy, build, or improve the home. Because the home equity loan proceeds were used to buy a car, the interest will not be deductible. So our answer for this one is going to be not deductible on Form 1040, and no credit is available. This wasn't difficult. You just needed to know the rules for itemizing deductions. As you identified each answer, you needed to select it and hit accept. This TBS tests your knowledge of tax regulations and your ability to recognize and apply the appropriate rule. It's a simple application level TBS. Moving on to a hard option choice TBS. This one comes from ODD. It is harder because you have two tasks and the tasks require some careful thinking. Now, a quick scan reveals 7 control problems. I'm going to need to identify the risks and consequences for each problem and an internal control that will address the problem. Now, looking more closely, I see that Griswold Corporation is an auto parts manufacturer with a big, whoops, sorry, how do I go back here? Okay. Oh dear. I am sorry. We are not doing this correctly here. Okay. Griswold Corporation is an auto parts manufacturer with a big accounts payable system handling 750 vendors. Internal Audit has issued a report identifying problems with the accounts payable system. Each problem will need to be matched to the risks and consequences and to an internal control that will address it. Now, there were some, note these extra instructions down here. Some risks and consequences will be used multiple times. Each control action will be used only one time. So this last instruction may require extra time to track which choices have already been used. Now, when I checked the choices for risks and consequences, I saw that the same risks and consequences were available for each of the control problems. I also checked the control actions and saw that the same control actions were available for each of the problems. When the choices are the same for each problem, you can take the time to look at the lists up front. So first, the risks and consequences. These are pretty easy to understand. We've got assets overstated and expenses understated. We've got fictitious or erroneous payments to vendors, inaccurate vendor information, inflates costs of purchases, and losses due to inventory theft or misplacement. So again, they're pretty easy to understand. I don't think we have to do any additional explanation here to understand those. Next, the controls. Now for the controls, what you want to do is understand what the control is going to accomplish. Controls over journal entry authorization and approval will prevent erroneous and fraudulent journal entries. Physical controls over parts inventory will help to prevent inventory loss. The accounts payable clerk matching vendor invoices, purchase orders, and receiving reports will help to ensure valid payments. Requiring vendors to include purchase orders on invoices will help prevent fraudulent invoices. Segregation of the duties of payment authorization and payment preparation will help to prevent payment fraud. Identification of and routing by due dates to the AP clerk will help prevent late payments. And finally, the use of pre-formatted screens with error checks will prevent errors in data entry. So now we can tackle the control problems, and it should go a little faster. The first problem is offered vendor discounts are lost. Now, when we lose vendor discounts, we end up paying out more money unnecessarily. The result is that our purchases will cost more. So our risk is going to be inflates costs of purchases. We don't have an asset being overstated or an expense being understated. We're not dealing with fictitious or erroneous payments. We're not dealing with inaccurate vendor information, and we're not dealing with losses due to inventory theft or misplacement. So again, the loss of vendor discounts ends up with us paying more money, and the risk, therefore, or consequence is that our costs of purchases are inflated. Next, the control that will help us to fix the problem. Vendor discounts are usually available within a specific time period. For example, 5% off if payment is made within 10 days. So we need to know when the discount period is ending. Our control is the accounting system identifies and routes due dates to the AP clerk. Because in addition to preventing late payments, it will also help us to ensure that we pay within the discount period and are able to utilize our vendor discounts. So because we had familiarized ourselves with the available choices at the beginning, we were able to pick out the correct answer more quickly. This option choice TBS was harder. There were multiple tasks, and the tasks required analysis. Now remember, when you're looking at a list of controls, to think about what the control is intended to ensure or prevent. That will make it easier to match it to a risk or a problem. Another thing to remember, you won't be able to memorize a standard answer for this type of TBS because the answer is going to depend on the choices that you're given. You simply need to practice identifying risks and selecting appropriate internal controls. Moving on to a FAR numeric entry TBS. In a numeric entry TBS, you need to calculate something. So this FAR problem required computation of ratios. You're provided with several exhibits, a balance sheet with the numbers for year 1 and year 2, and an income statement for year 2. At this point, before I go on to the last exhibit, I want to mention the tools that you can use with an exhibit. It's important to know what they are and to practice using them so you aren't hitting them for the first time when you take the exam. So when you open a TBS and you open an exhibit, you'll see that you have the Explore symbol, which enables you to search in a document for a word or a number. You can highlight, match case, or search for whole words. You also have a plus or minus sizer, which, it's obviously, it allows you to increase or decrease the size of the exhibit. You have another sizer, which enables you to do the same thing, but on a percentage basis. And it also includes page fit and page width controls, as well as zoom. And then there is a maximize button up at the top that simply enables you to, if you click on it, it enlarges the exhibit to full size. And if you click on it again, it reduces it back to the smaller size. Then you also have the 2 arrows on the side, which provide a number of options to you for rotation, text selection, scrolling, and for spreads. So again, oh, and then one more thing, you can also enlarge the exhibit by simply pulling on the bottom of the exhibit. So the goal here is to be able to easily read the information in the exhibit so that you can find what you're looking for. Now, the last exhibit is the analytics definitions. These are the formulas for the 22 ratios that are tested in the CPA exam. These definitions will appear with any TBS that requires ratios. Use these formulas. You don't need to memorize the ratios. Instead, understand the components of the formulas and what the ratios are used for. Yes, there are different ways to compute some of these ratios. The AI CPA is telling you through the definitions exactly how to compute them. So follow these formulas. Then one more thing to mention, some other tools available to you during the exam. You will get a laminated noteboard and permanent marker. You possibly will get paper and pencil, but I think they're providing this laminated noteboard now in replace of paper. Again, it's just available to you if you want to take notes. In the TBS testlets, up at the top, you'll see these tools available to you. There's Notes, which is a digital notepad for note taking. There's a calculator, which operates as an on-screen calculator. There is a spreadsheet, which is a JavaScript-based spreadsheet tool known as Spread.js. And there's Overview, which would provide a dashboard of all of the questions in the current testlet. So those tools are available to you as well. Now, in particular, practice using the calculator and the spreadsheet so that you're available with both before the exam. I practiced using the tools as I was working on the TBSs for this webinar, and I realized when I was trying to use the spreadsheet how much it was not exactly like Excel, and when I tried to automatically do certain things, it didn't do them, like cut and paste. So you really do need to practice with the calculator and the spreadsheet tools so you know how to use them, and it doesn't slow you down during the exam. So with that, let's go ahead and solve one of the ratios. How about accounts receivable turnover? The formula from the analytics definitions is net sales divided by average net accounts receivable. So the net sales number was easy. It was $960,534 from the income statement. Average accounts receivable requires adding the beginning and ending accounts receivable balances from the balance sheet and then dividing by 2. So I'm going to add $203,133 to $195,943 and divide by 2. That gives me an average net accounts receivable balance of $199,538. In order to get accounts receivable turnover, then I divide net sales of $960,534 and divide by the average net accounts receivable of $199,538, which gives me 4.81 as my accounts receivable turnover. Now, this TBS turned out to be fairly easy because you have the ratio formulas and the math isn't very difficult. We were adding and dividing. So then I need to enter the answer into the TBS. When I click on the 1, 2, 3 box, the entry screen comes up. I enter 4.81 and I will see 4.81 in the formatted response box. So then I just have to hit accept. A few tips on entering numbers. The only acceptable characters that can be entered are the numbers 0 to 9, decimals, minus signs, and parentheses. Unacceptable characters will be discarded. And it also is not necessary to enter commas, as the auto formatting function will enter them for you. So here are a couple of examples to tell you what I'm talking about. So if I wanted to enter 3,200 and I entered 3R200, the R would be ignored as an unacceptable character, and the auto formatting would give me 3,200 with the comma properly placed. Another example, if I wanted to enter 1,500 and I entered 1%00 because I hit the wrong key, the result would be 100. It would ignore the percentage sign and I wouldn't have the 5 that I needed. So again, look at the auto formatting box after you've entered your number just to make sure that you hit the keys correctly and the right number does appear. So next, a FAR journal entry TBS. As you might imagine, there are a lot of these in FAR, and they also appear in ODD. This FAR TBS requires reviewing the information provided and then determining the journal entry needed to record the property, plant, and equipment that was acquired. You are given a list of accounts to select from and will need to determine and enter the amounts. Now notice the instructions. These are standard instructions for journal entries. Double-click the shaded cells in the account name and select the appropriate account name from the list provided. An account may be used once or not at all for the entry. Then enter all debits first and then enter credits in the appropriate column, putting them in the order they are listed in the information list above. Round all amounts to the nearest dollar. All rows are not necessarily required to complete the entry, and leave any unused cells blank. Now, going back to look at the detail, I see that the purchase involved land, a building, factory equipment, office furniture and fixtures, insurance, and maintenance. Due to the large amount of information provided, this will be a good time to use the spreadsheet. And here's the spreadsheet. Here's the spreadsheet JS that you would see in your TBS, that would be available to you in this TBS. Now, again, you're going to be accumulating the amounts for all of these different kinds of assets. So you'll need the spreadsheet. Well, the spreadsheet might help you to do it faster and will help prevent, hopefully, errors in your math. So the solution that you come up with might look something like this. Of course, yours would have a lot more abbreviations. You're not going to take the time to type out everything as perfectly as I did. But every item in this list needed to be considered, needed to be read, and then the accounting treatment identified for that item. The land cost, for example, turned out to be $545,000. It consisted of the purchase cost of the land of $500,000, the accrued property tax payment of $6,000, the demolition cost for the old building of $54,000, the settlement of the lien against the land of $25,000, and then the costs were offset by the proceeds from the salvage of materials from the old building. So we ended up with, again, a total land cost of $545,000. So you could do this, you were able to do the same thing with all of the other items, the building, the equipment, the office furniture, and the prepaid expenses, in coming up with the journal entry that you needed. Now, what about the credits? The initial instructions cited a bond issuance for $1 million with a balance paid in cash. So after getting all of the costs accounted for, you simply added them up and then subtracted $1 million in order to determine the amount that you needed for cash. To prepare the final journal entry, you needed to remember the instructions, start with the debits, place the accounts in the same order as the information provided, meaning that you started with land, then enter the credits, and unused cells can be left blank. Which brings us to our last and most difficult TBS type, the document review simulation, or DRS. Why is it so hard? It includes multiple exhibits and usually hits the analysis and evaluation levels, the highest levels tested in the exam. The additional complexity of the DRS means that it will require more time. Now, here's an example of an odd DRS. The first thing that you want to do is scan the DRS. There are two exhibits, part of a business projection report and a memo about a tour of the Florida facility. You've got background information being provided. The task is to edit a memo discussing the risks of material misstatement identified and the impact of those risks on the audit plan. The memo has 6 different risks that we will need to look at. So each of these underlined areas are the risks that we need to address. Now that we've scanned it and we know what we're going to need to do, we can do a more detailed review. So WaterPlay Inc. is a non-issuer. It is a Florida-based manufacturer of jet boats and personal watercraft. It is in its 9th year of operations. Jet boat sales have been declining, as has demand. The competitors, some competitors have gone into bankruptcy. And to make matters worse, there are new federal emissions regulations that will add cost to the operation. Then it is an audit of year 9. It is a first-year audit by the CPA firm Newton & Jones. The prior audit firm was unhappy with the change, but there were no disagreements between the prior audit firm and management. The change was because WaterPlay has a 5-year policy where they only stay with an auditor for 5 years. A senior from the previous audit firm has gone to work for WaterPlay. Next, we're going to look at the exhibits. So the business projection report indicated that a new CEO had been hired. A new bonus-based compensation package has been instituted. The new CEO has set a very aggressive sales target of a 25% increase. Sales staff have been moved to commissions, and a change is planned for the retail outlets. The facility tour revealed a need for minor repairs. It indicated that the finished goods inventory was kept outside in a fenced lot. Some of the inventory looked a little dusty. There were complaints from clerical staff about pay. The accounting software was upgraded recently, and annual vacations for accounting staff are not required. Now, you want to be careful here. You need to know the information available to you so you can find it, but you don't have to memorize it. So now that we've familiarized ourselves with the background information and the exhibits, we can tackle the first risk. It is the change in audit firms, and in particular, the prior CPA firm. They were unhappy about losing WaterPlay. Does the CPA firm's unhappiness create an audit risk? Firms are normally unhappy about losing good clients. That by itself isn't a problem. The area where problems could arise is if there were disagreements between the client and the CPA firm. Now, we know that there weren't any because it clearly said they indicate that no disagreements with management have previously occurred. So there doesn't seem to be any risk here. Let's take a look at our choices. Now, we will always have the choice of keeping the original text or deleting it. If we look at the original text and the third choice, they both referred to financial statement risk. Financial statement risk is an overall risk to the financial statements. Specifically, a risk of the financial statements being materially misstated. Is financial statement risk created by the CPA firm's unhappiness, the prior CPA firm's unhappiness? No. So we don't need to consider the different options for dealing with financial statement risk. The next two choices refer to assertion risk. Assertion risk is the risk that an assertion related to an account balance or a transaction class is materially misstated. Was assertion risk created by the CPA firm's unhappiness? No. We can again ignore the two different audit plan responses for addressing assertion risk. The last choice is no risk exists, but discussion with the prior audit firm is needed. The answer, no risk and a discussion with the prior audit firm. You know, a discussion with the prior auditors is required by GAS, Generally Accepted Auditing Standards, whenever a change in auditors occurs. As you work your way through the risks, you will be applying your knowledge of GAS in addition to determining whether and what type of risk is present and what kind of audit response, if any, is needed. Now, this DRS wasn't really complicated. The chief danger was information overload, thinking that you had to use every bit of information and not being able to sort out what you had been given. So now that we've looked at all 4 types of TBSs, you can see that they can become more complex when you add information and when multiple tasks are required. You know, I've seen some TBSs, I think they were optionless TBSs actually, but anyway, I've seen some TBSs where they had 7 exhibits, and you know, 7 exhibits can immediately cause you to start breathing heavily. But really, the TBSs are very doable. The math is pretty basic: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And the key to the extra information is simply to familiarize yourself with what is available so you can find it and use it when it is needed. So I'm going to wrap up here with a few tips and techniques to ensure your mastery of TBSs in the CPA exam. First, time management is critical. Don't get stuck in the multiple choice testlets. Make sure you leave enough time for those TBS testlets. Second, understand the tools available and practice using them. The spreadsheet, as I mentioned before, is now Spread.js, not full Excel. Knowing which shortcuts work and how to quickly manage exhibit windows saves precious time that can be used for actual problem solving. You know, and again, you can't copy and paste, which was really making me unhappy. Scan the TBS initially to see what is required. The requirement first approach prevents you from reading aimlessly. By looking at the answer cells first, you create a mental filter that helps you identify useful data immediately when you eventually open the exhibits. Then do a more detailed review to understand the information that has been provided. Once you know the ask, you can categorize the exhibits. For example, this is the trial balance with the numbers, and this is the memo with the dates. This creates a roadmap that enables you to solve the problems you've been given. Recognize that TBSs with exhibits may take more time. Time management is the silent killer of the CPA exam. Expecting a multi-exhibit TBS to take 15 to 20 minutes versus 5 to 10 minutes for a simple one will help you maintain your composure and avoid rushing through complex details. Don't think that you have to use all of the information. The exam intentionally includes distractors, data points that look official but are irrelevant to the specific calculation or response needed. And finally, answer all of the questions. Partial credit is given for correct answers. There is no penalty for wrong answers. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Quinn.
All right. Excellent. What great information. Thank you so much, Jeannie. This was great. Let's take a little peek into the CPA review course designed specifically to help you. So, of course, you would expect that it's mapped to all the AICPA blueprints, and it features all the 2026 updates. More importantly, if you can do 3 things in our system, ladies and gentlemen, you have a 90% pass rate, and that's data that's been pulled from January 2024 until August of last year. 90%. So consider that. It's a combined program that's using the benefit of Roger CPA, widely efficient learning, and of course, our global lead instructors headed by Peter Olento. Next slide, Jeannie. Let's go. Let's take a look at the program. So, like Jeannie said, the silent killer of the exam is time management. And that's also one of the main reasons people really struggle with getting it done. So we offer you a dynamic study planner. This allows you to pick from a variety of settings and literally allows you to choose your start and end dates. Next slide. And with that, you can also go in and select the actual days and hours that you'd like to study. This is fully adaptable. So as you're involved in work, school, life, and you're getting brought into, maybe you've got to go on vacation or a wedding, or maybe you're brought into an engagement with your manager, you can adapt your study plan to the realities of your work life situation to stay on track. Okay, once you create your plan, you're then going to come through the following assets. So next slide. So from the study planner, now we're going to talk about our instructors. And listen, a couple things about these instructors. Over half of them, well, first of all of them, okay, have worked in public accounting. And you just would assume that if you were a CPA review provider, that all your instructors would have worked in public accounting. But let me inform you that that is not the case. Certainly that's the case if you want to work at UWorld. And half of these instructors have then gone on, like Dr. Yamamura, and gotten their PhDs. And who knows how to break down information better than a good college instructor and teach to a variety of needs and to a variety of learning styles. So that's exactly what you'll see here. So from the global lead instructors of Peter Linto and Roger Phillip, to Megan Burke and Dr. Yamamura and Dr. Youngberg and Greg Carnes, you've got leading authors of some of the leading tax books in the market. You've got folks with a wealth of experience that really care about accounting and CPA exam success. Next slide. Okay, you're also going to see these instructors just like you're seeing Jeannie and I today. You're going to have videos. This is the first of 4 that are in 20-minute segments that allow you to basically interact with them. Now, I know it's a video module, but these are all 20 minutes or less. So they're very digestible, and they cover and are going to talk about the exact topics on the exam. And those are signified over by the right there with those representative tasks. So they're all the lectures are right on point. They coincide with the study guide material that's on the right, but they're not reading it. They're presenting their own material, and it's a way to reinforce those concepts, all of which are aligned to the representative tasks in the program and on the exam. So lecture number 1. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right. And does it look sexy? But it is critically important. And that is, first of all, you'll notice, any of you that are in the pipeline right now and have taken any parts of the exam, that our question and answer sequence looks the same as the actual interface in the Prometric Testing Center. You are being prepared for examination day by using the same tools and the same interface that you're going to get on exam day. But then the question and answer sequence is really important. This is the point where the rubber hits the road. Your understanding of these key concepts is measured out and then provided a clear, consistent, and concise answer response that's going to explain why all the incorrect answers are incorrect. It's going to illustrate the major concept with the visual, and then it's going to give you an overarching concept of what's being tested here and the thing to remember. Now, if that doesn't calibrate you back to the right understanding of how to get to the right answer, you have additional links there, including the link right back to that video component and the study guide, that exact section. And look, if you look carefully there at the bottom, of course, you'll see our good old friend, the representative task, showing us how and exactly why this question is being asked and how it relates to the blueprint on the exam. So this thing makes a nice little learning circle with that lecture material that you saw before, and users all over people that have come from other platforms tell us all the time how much they appreciate the quality and consistency of these answer responses. All right, next. If you like those answer responses, you're going to love the Smart Path. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the UWorld Smart Path. Consider it your grade book powered by AI, okay? And what's happening here is on the left-hand side, you are seeing your scores, okay? And on the right-hand side, we're measuring how many questions you've taken. And all through each the scores and the number of questions, you're seeing these green targets. What does that mean? And how's that going to help you pass the exam? Well, listen carefully, because those green targets have been established by people that have used the same system and passed the exam their first time. So this is an efficacy model. It's not intended to have you take every single question in the QBank. No, 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 no. What it's trying to do is make sure that you stay in the sweet spot between the right score performance and the right number of questions. And then what's going to happen is you're going to get a green, yellow, or red. And if you look over here to the right, you're going to see 2 green targets. Now, listen to this. If you can turn 75% or more of your chapters green, you then have a 90% chance of passing the exam. Okay, I want you to just hear that again. If you can use all these learning assets to turn these chapters green, target met, like you're seeing over here on the right, your chances of passing this exam go to 90%. Significant improvement over the national pass rate, significant time savings for you, your family, and your firm, and a great way to put this exam behind you. SmartPath is a great way to make sure that you are on track. All right, Jeannie, next slide. All right, now, as you know, there's going to be some parts of that SmartPath and other parts of those chapters that are harder than others. And a big portion of that is also going to be the task-based simulations. We know, as of this whole series, how important they are. And to help you with those strategies, in addition to this specific webinar series we have, embedded in the course are task-based simulation mastery videos, taking the steps required to conquer the task-based simulation. So things like journal entries, document review are all covered here. And as you go through the QBank and you're engaging with task-based simulations, there's over 100 video responses that show you specifically how to answer and address the task-based simulation question that you took before. So task-based simulations, we've got you covered. All right, Jeannie, next slide. Here we go. So from task-based simulations to challenging topics, we've got them covered there for you too. We run basically one per month. These are live CPA boot camps, and they cover the most challenging areas on the exam, okay? This is the EPS, diluted EPS, statement of cash flows, all those just thorny topics, okay? But don't worry, we've got you covered. Now we leave the 20-minute video, and our third video offering here is now 2 hours, okay? A deep dive. Dr. Yamamura and our other lead instructors are going to take you through multiple choice. They're going to take you through task-based simulations, and they're going to integrate test-taking techniques all the way through this deep dive on a single subject. So if you've got areas of your SmartPath that are just not progressing at the same rate, don't worry, we've got you covered in the boot camp. And if you want to sign up for the updating boot camps that are coming, get out those phones and hit this QR code. You'll have a whole listing of the schedule that's forthcoming. All right, dynamite. Next slide. So from the boot camps, we now then get ready for the exam itself. And so in addition to our exam simulator, we are now offering 2 mock exams, okay? Now, what's great about these mock exams, these are questions that you have not seen before. Okay, they have not been introduced into the course yet. They're also weighted proportional to the coverage on the exam. So there's just not a random QBank that's opening up. It's actually proportional. Coverage is proportional to what you would expect on the real exam. And the score is going to be indicative of how your readiness is for the exam. In fact, there's a little bit of a bump that happens, or our customers are telling us, in regard to how they perform on the mock exams and then their higher scores on the real exam. So we've got you covered there with the mock exams as well. All right, next slide. And again, it's worth another slide, because I'll tell you what, if you just look at other programs nationwide, we know that the pass rate of this exam is roughly 50, right now I think it's 53%. That means if you're just a normal candidate using a normal program, that you're taking this exam somewhere between 8 and 9 times. That is a lot, okay? If you want to come through with a 90% average and go into the testing center knowing that you've done the work and the system that you're using is telling you that you are test ready, do it with UWorld. Here's what you have to do. 75% of the Smart Path targets, 60 days of consecutive study, and during those 60 days, 100 practice quizzes, just like Jeanne was showing you here today. That's what you do, and then you've got that 90% confidence going into the exam. What a great feeling. You know, it's not that anxiety of, oh, did I do enough questions and I've got to complete the Q bank. No, no, no. It's that sweet balance between performance at the right chapter level with the right amount of questions, multiple choice and task-based simulations, of course. All right, next slide. Okay, well, here's the package. If you're interested in purchasing, if you're working at a firm, we're happy to partner with you. If you want to purchase today, we love that too. So get those phones out. And then this is the full set of all of the features that are available to you. I'm not going to go through all of them, but let me tell you, this is a fully comprehensive course that has all the bells and whistles, from study planners to the Smart Path technology to the UI UAsk feature that's being included, all the study guides, print and electronic, more questions than you ever want to take, but they're all in there, live boot camps and access until you pass. So if you're interested, this is a great webinar offer that's available until April 13th. I can see Julie's knocked that price down. Good job, Julie. Get out those QR phones or those phones, snap up that QR code, use that until April 13th, and then you'll probably see that price tick back up, I'm assuming. Anyway, that's what we have for the program. And let's just do our next slide. And as we get ready for that next slide, let's talk about the other series that's out there. If you like this webinar, don't worry, we've got others for you. So we'll continue with the task-based simulation webinar. We talked about that in the beginning. This is the FAR lecture series. These webinars are coming up, and they will talk about leases. Okay, that's next month, at the end of next month. And then after that, it's going to be statement of cash flows. I mean, gosh, just two of the hallmark areas where we could use a little bit of extra help and love and support. We're going to provide it to you. Peter Linto is going to do that lecture. Okay, leases, 3 to 5 p.m. Central Time on April 29th. Sign up now. Again, get those phones out, save your spot using that QR code. And I think that is going to be it. Jeanne, why don't you take us to the next slide here in a second, and then I'll, yep, this is how you continue for the next series of the other 4 task-based mastery webinar series. May will be the next one, followed by August and then October. All right, but thank you guys for joining and for signing up. There's been some questions along the way, so Jeanne, we're going to try to put you on the hot spot here. I'll try to read it nice and slow. You do the best that you can, but if we can't address them here, we'll follow up with everybody who submitted these. So I think we've got about 7 questions, and we have about 7 minutes. So we'll see how far we can get. Okay, so question number 1. How much total time should we leave to complete the task-based simulation testlets comfortably? When should we move on from the multiple choice to have enough time to complete the TBSs? Great question.
You know, that is a good question, and I'm thinking of this flow chart that I have, or this image where I had identified the amount of time, because I think it was you wanted to allot like 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes for each multiple choice question, and then and then set that aside for the 2 multiple choice testlets, with the remaining time then being available for the TBS testlets. And so that would be under, I think, 2 hours for the multiple choice testlets, with the balance of the time then, the balance of the 2 hours plus being available for the TBS testlets.
Yeah, that sounds what we say on the sales side too. We basically say about 90 seconds for multiple choice, and then somewhere around 15 minutes for those task-based simulations. And I think that puts you right at the same calculation. Great question. Terrific answer. Question number 2. Is it true that at least one of the TBSs are disregarded for scoring purposes on the exam?
You know, I think so, but I haven't gotten official confirmation because I know that the exam includes practice questions, test questions in the multiple choice, and which is why we tell you.
And the task-based simulations.
And and then one task-based simulation, because they can't eat up too much of your time with, I know there are more multiple choice questions that are test questions, but yes, there is one, but it's not going to tell you in, big bold letters, this is the practice one. So you can do whatever you want. So what I tell people is, if you hit a multiple choice question or a TBS that you just hate, do the best job you can, answer it, and then tell yourself it was one of those practice ones. So it doesn't blow your confidence, and you just continue right on.
Well, Jeanne, we also tell them, take the test in the best sequence for you. So if you get to a challenging question, we say put the marker on it and come back to it, because right behind that one, there could be a question or two that you're able to answer very quickly. It'll actually save you time as you come back. And then you can give it the dedicated 15 minutes or the 90 seconds. And if your answer is not there, just pick C, but make your best qualified guess. But, I think it's important to remember, test taking strategy is essential, not only for getting through and answering every question, but taking the test in a way that allows you to accentuate your strengths and not go through that emotional up and down of, oh, that was a hard question, I'm still thinking about it as I'm engaged with the next one. So, all right, here we go. Let's try to get through these. I'm talking too much. For the FAR, will the formulas be provided for the exam?
Those analytic definitions, yes. They are available in every TBS that requires ratios.
Excellent. Okay, question number 5. Even if the 22 ratios are provided for TBSs, wouldn't one need to still memorize the ratios for the multiple choice questions?
Oh, good question. Yes and no. They don't tend to. I mean, they do. There is a little bit of testing in the multiple choice questions on the ratios, but I don't know. But I don't think, not as much as you would think, where you would need to get into the formula. So, okay. What do you think, Quinn?
Well, I think we got 2 questions left in about 2 minutes. So okay, I'm going to move on to, I'm going to make a run for it. All right, here we go. Are the videos in UWorld's TBS Mastery Series each different, or will the material covered today be repeated in other sessions? So as we do the webinar series, are we taking a look at this? Yeah.
We're planning in this mastery series, in this introduction to the different types of TBSs, there's a little bit of information that'll be repeated about the different types of TBSs and the exam, but we plan to cover different TBSs for each of the types in each of the webinars. So the TBSs that I addressed tonight will not be the ones that will be talked about in the remaining webinars.
We're not that company. We're going to give you more than you can handle, so yeah, we'll keep it fresh. Great question though. Okay. And I think our last question, does the CPA exam still adjust to your knowledge? For example, if you are struggling to answer basics in reg, will the software continue to test you on that topic, essentially resulting in a failing score since you're weak in that area? I'll take that one. So the adaptability component is no longer part of the exam. So it's no longer scaling up or scaling down, which leaves you really scratching your head at the end of that testing experience, wondering, how you did. So the answer is no, it's no longer adaptable. And with that, we have exactly 30 seconds left. Jeanne, I want to thank you so much. You crushed this. Everybody that showed up, on behalf of the UWorld team, let us connect with you. We just want to support your CPA success. That's our business. And we really appreciate you signing up today. We hope to see you at the other 3. And to Julie behind the scenes, excellent job, Julie. Thank you. We hope you all have a great, safe day and a wonderful testing experience on the CPA exam.